Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has flown to London for follow-up consultation with his doctors. His special advisor on media, Femi Adesina, released a statement that the president delayed his journey until Sunday evening so he could meet with the 82 Chibok girls released on Saturday. He also tweeted about the trip. The length of the president's stay will be determined by his doctors, and letters have been transmitted to the Senate and House of Representatives. President Buhari's special assistant on media, Garba Shehu, is now joining us from Abuja. Good to have you, Garba Shehu, tonight on the News Hour. So what can you tell us about the negotiations that led to the release, thankfully, of these 82 Chibok girls?
Well, we had support from local and international NGOs, some foreign governments, and international aid agency as well. This has helped to facilitate discussions for several months, as a consequence of which we got the 32 by exchanging a number of suspected terrorists in the custody of the Nigerian government.
Okay, I'm sure many Nigerians will be curious to know exactly the number of Boko Haram terrorists that were released in exchange for these girls, and how vital really are these people to the Boko Haram terrorist camp?
Well, let me just explain that I would rather that we focus on the number of persons, the lives that we are getting back in our. We have 82 girls. Actually, there would have been 83. This 83rd person, by choice, declined to come back. Even if we had given, say, a dozen people, people would look at it as when you give, say, up to 10, 12, and get 82 or so lives, aren't you better off? But in this case, we are talking even about a number far less than a dozen. So it's not a number that should alarm anybody.
Now, were there any guarantees given on the part of the Boko Haram for government to release the particular number of terrorists that were released, that they would not go back and strengthen the terrorist group and then take off from where they ended from?
Well, in experiences from all over the world, teach you that you are balancing risks, advantages, and that you stand to gain. As I said earlier on, in this case, we have got 82 innocent girls, to save from this unwanted situation. So therefore, on balance, if you are releasing less than maybe half a dozen persons, is that number significant enough to go and change the ongoing, ground situation as to, the ongoing war against terror? I think that our officials have done their calculations very well. We have been reading a lot of speculations, people talking about commanders, and I'm not sure there's anything like that. The government is a very responsible one, and I'm sure that every release was weighed in the best national interest before it was facilitated.
Of course, Nigerians are delighted about that, but there is another thorny issue that seems to trouble the minds of Nigerians, and that is the health of Mr. President. Shortly after he met with the 82 Chibok girls, he took off for London for more medical attention. What can you tell us about that? We don't seem to be sure how long this trip will take this time.
But this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, because the president himself had announced when he returned from the earlier medical vacation that he would go back for a re-evaluation of his treatment. And at the right time, he would make an announcement to that effect. So therefore, this one is just in pursuant to that commitment he had given the nation. And according to the statement as clearly stated, Nigerians should pray for their president, but there's nothing to worry about. I think we should take it in that spirit.
Okay, you say there's nothing. You say there's nothing to worry about, but is there any particular reason why the exact state of health of Mr. President is shrouded in more or less secrecy?
Well, the president has done, I think, the most any leader could do in saying so much about his health condition. Past experience in this country did not even tell you whether anyone was ill or not. And I'm not sure even in other countries of the world, leaders go on parading their own medical certificates on their forehead. I think that there are privacy concerns. And the president has done as much as anybody could possibly have done, saying to Nigerians, how wrongly things had gone with his own health.
Charge really all through the time that Mr. President had not really been showing up, whether the Jumat services. Of course, he did show up this last Friday, but the FEC meetings, he has not been in attendance. Has he really been in charge of governance, really?
There is absolutely nothing to suggest that the president had abdicated his responsibility as President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I think that what we need to understand in this circumstance is that there's a lot of work presidents do in the office. Yes, there are also a lot of ceremonial activities. I think if anything had been lost over the past few weeks, is the fact of the president's none or very limited involvement in ceremonial activities. And I'm not sure that is something that detracts from the effectiveness of the presidency, especially given that he has a very capable and efficient vice president.
And what's the presidency's response to calls from some quarters that if the president is not fit enough to deliver as president, then he should step aside or step down for his vice to take over?
Well, look, the president loves himself more than any other person will pretend that they love him. If the president is persuaded that he's good enough, he's fit enough to discharge the office of the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who is this interloper to come and say that the president should... He feels the pain, he knows his own condition, and he knows that it doesn't get in the way of doing the job. If anybody has evidence or proof that the president has failed in the discharge of duty, then let them say it. Otherwise, there's nothing on the ground to suggest that the president has failed in his capacity as the leader of this country, as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
Well, you describe these people as interlopers. Are you saying there is no reason to be concerned about Mr. President's health, and more importantly, the fact that he can actually deliver on governance?
Exactly. The president himself has said there is nothing to worry about.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to leave it there. Shehu Garba, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, joining us tonight on the News Hour and talking about not just the President's departure to London, but of course the release of the 82 Chibok girls that the President has met. Of course, he met them before he departed for London.